This team doesn't have the same heart and enthusiasm, love that you felt before. I mean,
how much of that came from that guy? The crisis, as Steve Kerr called it, which probably people brushed off but should have been paid attention to a little bit more, which was the Draymond Green, Jordan Poole and video becoming public. That even before that, you were always going to be playing somewhat of a dangerous game when a guy that has meant so much to your franchise and is admittedly the heart and soul of the franchise and what you have accomplished for so long. That has been the role that he has played, and a demonstrative leader that anytime you're not going to make him whole and not pay him, and you are going to pay other guys, it's always a dangerous game to play, at least for that season, because that's the one guy that you don't want having a level of discontent towards the operation. So that's aside. You expect everybody to be a professional, and more importantly, you don't expect anyone to ever punch another guy in the face. But when you combine that, what was already going to be a thing that was hovering out there, when the other two have been made whole, when you just won another title and he's not getting an extension to retire a Warrior, have his name up at the rafters, like he's the one that didn't get taken care of. And then you have this possibly catastrophic event within the team take place. I think it's hard to get all that together. I think it's hard to get all that together. Because
it's tough, man.
It's still hovering. It is.
It is. Undeniably. This team doesn't have the same heart and enthusiasm, love that you felt before.
How much of that came from that guy? You expected that when they went into the locker room after a loss, there was one guy that was in the middle of that locker room screaming at everybody. Yeah, Clay's, holds weight, and what he said would matter. And Curry's not that kind of guy, right? You never see Curry, he might show a level of, he might be upset with another player, but he's not that kind of a leader. You knew who the loudmouth was. You knew who the guy that was doing the barking was. And you have fractured that dramatically. Can't you imagine that if Campaign has 29 and you give up 130 and you've stayed winless on the road against Phoenix and you've wasted a 50-point Curry performance? You know who's going in that locker room. You know who's the one that's going to be yelling at everybody. And I don't think you can do that anymore with the same fervor, with the same respect that you once commanded from everyone, right? And so we thought that it could have a profound effect on the team. Listening to those Kerr quotes and talk about what that team lacks, I think an awful lot of that probably emitted from a guy that's been a staple of that franchise for over a decade, who has rendered the ability to lead much more difficult. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they have to find themselves. Otherwise, look, I think with Draymond, he's irreplaceable, but you can change who you are if you do need to replace him. Does that make sense? Like, you can never replace Draymond, but you can always become something else. And I think that speaks to who Stephen Curry is. So if there comes a point, I think if you're the Warriors, one of the priorities this season needs to be finding a backup plan in case Draymond wants to leave, or if you decide you don't want to have Draymond anymore after this year. Like, I think they have to make some trades personally.
It was one of my semi-bolts.
Yeah.
It was one of my semi-bowl predictions, remember? And that was because I think that everybody just said, oh, athletes get over this kind of stuff and whatever else. Like, think of it like your job. That happened at your job, and that guy's walking in every day. It's just, for all the exploits of his career, it's what you think about now. It's what you think about now. And every day, when he walks into that locker room, that's what you're going to think about. Every day you're at shoot around. I mean, it's just, once something like that happens, I think, and the video changed things too.
Oh yeah.
If it's not on video and the whole world hadn't seen it, I actually think it's possible to have overcome it, because you got everybody reporting in a cockamamie way. Remember? An aggressive move towards Jordan-Poole. Then we saw the video. We were like, oh my God, knock the guy out. Like, it's unheard of.
They were 18-2 last year to start the season, 6-9 right now. Where do you think they'll be after 20 games? They have Knicks on Friday night, like you said, then at Houston, at New Orleans, versus Clippers, versus Utah. That's their next 5 games to get to 20. How many of those do you think they win?
Maybe 2.
Yeah, so you think they'll be 8-12 after 20 games this season after starting 18-2 last year. I feel the same
they'll make
as you.
moves.
Maybe
they're going to make. They will make moves. We know this. Come on, they'll make moves. They're spending $1 bazillion on that team. They're in win now mode.
Yeah, I wonder how. What I'm wondering about. This is the question I asked in my article this week. The last line was, to support Steph and the franchise's chase for a 5th championship, the Warriors shouldn't worry too much about the future, but they also can't live in the past. Like, I grew up a Patriots fan.
Yep.
Very spoiled, winning all the time. But I also, many times over the years, was heartbroken by the decisions that the franchise made to get rid of star players, Lawyer Malloy, Richard Seymour. And eventually, you get used to it, right? You're like, oh, okay, yeah, they got rid of a star player. They're going to have somebody else new, right? Like, that's the way my upbringing as a sports fan. I say all that to say, I wonder if the Warriors are going to continue down the Spurs path where they're like, we're going to keep it together with Duncan, Manu, Parker, no matter what. Or if they're going to go the Patriots way and say, Steph is our Tom Brady, and everything around him can change because of the level of player that Curry is. That we can still have success and change who we are with totally different personnel, because if the chemistry problems are indeed due to the Draymond thing, that may need to change. If Klay Thompson does not get better, you have him making $40 million this year, $42 million next year. He cannot be part of winning more championships unless he gets better. He might get better. I just want to make that extremely clear. He might get better. We've seen him have bad stretches before throughout his career. This one's just worse than any of them, and it comes after major injuries. But if he doesn't get better, something needs to change, not just with the young guys being traded for some vets, right? Like Miles Turner, Kuzma, whatever it is. But they also have to at least consider within that front office changing the vets around Steph too. I just wonder, is it the Patriots path or the Spurs path they go, and how aggressive would they be willing to be in doing that? Like, to me, that's the philosophical question that the Warriors are going to have to address this year to find out who they actually are going to be as they continue trying to contend for titles. So they just won one with those guys,
right?
With Klay having massive closeout games, right? Like, we just saw that a couple months ago,
and they were not good in the spring. Like, that is easily forgotten. Remember, they were like post-January, they were like, it wasn't like they were winning 70% of their games. They were winning more like 50% of their games. And then they got to the playoffs, took care of business.